Blind versus blind, pre-flop blueprint. Blind versus blind is where online poker games quietly print money. You are fighting over a small pot, but the ranges are wide, the positions are weird, and the mistakes are massive. Most players either overfold because they feel out of position, or they overfight because it feels like just blinds. Both leaks get punished. Your job pre-flop is to build a plan that survives contact with the rake, stack depth, and the opponent type. Relative strength is everything here, because hands that look pretty in unopened pots often become fragile once ranges widen and 3 bets start flying. Why blind versus blind feels different. In a blind versus blind pot, both players are forced in, and nobody is capped the way a tight early position open might be. The small blind gets first chance to apply pressure but plays the rest of the hand out of position. The big blind gets position post-flop, but starts with dead money invested and faces a very aggressive opener. This creates a unique combo of incentives. The small blind should open wider than most positions. The big blind should defend much wider than versus button because you are getting a price and you have position. At the same time, online rake makes low equity calls less attractive, so you want fewer hope defenses and more hands that either realize well or can push fold equity. Small blind strategy, open raising with intent. In most online pools, the small blind should be opening very frequently. If you are playing 100 big blinds deep, a solid baseline is a high-frequency raise first in strategy, with a smaller limping component only if you have a reason. Many players auto-limp because they fear playing bloated pots out of position. That is passive, and it hands expected value to competent big blinds. Use sizing that keeps your range elastic. On many online sites, 2.5x is a clean default. 3x is fine, versus players who underdefend. A smaller size increases big blind defense frequency, which is good if you outplay post-flop and keep your range wide, but it also increases rake impact, so do not go tiny without a plan. First, value opens are obvious. Premium pairs, strong aces, broadways. Second, utility opens matter more blind versus blind. Suited kings, suited connectors, one-gappers, hands that can barrel. Third, trash folds still exist. The worst offsuit junk that cannot defend a 3-bet and cannot realize equity. A mistake I see constantly when multi-tabling is opening hands that are technically in the chart, then folding too much versus 3 bets. That is burning expected value twice. If your open range contains hands that cannot continue versus a normal big blind 3-bet strategy, you need either a tighter open or a defense plan. Big blind strategy. Defend wide, not weak. The big blind has position post-flop, and you already have 1 BB in there, so you defend a lot. The leak is defending with hands that do not do anything well. We do not want set mining calls with tiny pairs purely to hit a set, because in rake environments you need more than implied odds. You want hands that can win without flopping a miracle, or hands that can turn into aggressive lines. Your big blind toolkit has 3 actions: fold, call, and 3-bet. The best players build their strategy around a strong, mixed 3-bet range and a disciplined calling range that realizes equity. First, call hands that play well in position: suited aces, suited broadways, suited connectors, pairs. Second, 3-bet for value with hands that crush. Small blind opens pocket queens and better, ace-king, and a healthy amount of ace-queen, pocket jacks, pocket tens depending on opponent. Third, 3-bet as a bluff with blockers and playability, ace-5 suited to ace-2 suited, king-5 suited type hands, some suited connectors at deeper stacks. The reason blockers matter is simple expected value logic. When you 3-bet with an ace blocker, you reduce the chance. Small blind has the top continuing hands and you increase fold equity. That matters a lot when the pot is small and you are trying to win it pre-flop. 3-bet pots, the real money spot. Blind versus blind is where 3-bet pots happen the most, because both ranges are wide and both players smell weakness. You need to know what you are trying to accomplish with each 3-bet. It is either value because worse continues or pressure because folds are profitable and you have blockers. Think in terms of continuing ranges, not hands. If the small blind opens very wide and then overfolds to 3 bets, you should 3-bet a lot even with hands that are not strong because the immediate pot pickup is high expected value. If small blind opens wide but 4-bets aggressively and defends well post-flop, you tighten your bluffs and 3-bet a more polarized range. Pay attention to who is left to act when you get into blind versus blind sequences in games with straddles or unusual formats. In standard cash, there is nobody left, so you can apply maximum pressure. In some online variants, extra blinds or antes change the pot odds and tighten the equilibrium slightly. 4 bets, stay sane, stay profitable. Many players turn blind versus blind into an ego war. That is expensive. Your 4-bet strategy should be mostly linear for value, with a small bluff component when opponent 3-bets too wide. Position is inverted here. Small blind is out of position post-flop, so small blind 4-betting creates a big pot where you will be guessing. That means small blind should 4-bet a bit tighter than big blind would, from position, all else equal. From the big blind, you can 4-bet more aggressively because you will have position post-flop if called. That positional edge increases realization and makes some thinner value and bluff 4-bets viable. First, small blind versus big blind, 3-bet. Value heavy. 4 bets, pick bluffs carefully. Second, big blind versus small blind, 3-bet. More ability to lean on position, mix in more pressure. Rake and stack depth. 2 silent inputs. Online rake punishes marginal calls. That is not an excuse to overfold. It is a reason to upgrade the quality of your continues. Edges come from clean, pre-flop construction. If you call and then fit or fold post-flop, you are paying rake to donate. At 100 big blinds, many hands can profitably 3-bet bluff because stacks are not deep enough to realize massive implied odds for callers. At 200 BB plus, suited connectors and suited wheel aces move up in value because you can win big pots when you hit strong draws and disguised hands. At shallow stacks, you should reduce speculative calls and increase aggressive pre-flop action. Exploitative adjustments you should actually use. GTO gives you a baseline. Online, you make money by identifying pool tendencies. Here are the 3 most common blind versus blind leaks and how you punish them. First, small blind opens too big, defend tighter, 3-bet more linear for value, and punish with more calls in position when price is bad for small blind post-flop. Second, small blind overfolds to 3 bets. Increase big blind, 3-bet bluff frequency. Use ace and king blockers. Keep sizing consistent so you do not telegraph. Third, big blind over defends. Small blind should open bigger and value bet thinner later. Pre-flop, widen your value open and reduce garbage bluffs. Context dictates strategy. A thinking regular will notice if you only 3-bet premiums. A maniac will give you action and overbluffs post-flop. Your pre-flop plan should already account for that because pre-flop is where you decide how often you arrive on later streets with range advantage. Hand scenario, the price of position. Game. 100 big blinds online cash, heads up in the blinds. Hero. Big blind with 8-7 suited of spades, villain. Small blind is a competent regular who opens wide and folds a bit too much to 3 bets. Pre-flop. Small blind opens to 2.5 BB. Hero. 3 bets to 9 BB, small blind calls. Flop. King of hearts, 6 of clubs, 2 of spades. Pot is 18 BB. Action. Small blind checks. Hero bets 5.5 BB. This is the point. Your hand is not a made hand, but it is not dead. You have a backdoor flush, a backdoor straight component, and you have the range story. Your 3-bet range contains strong kings and overpairs. Small blind check calling range is full of mid pairs, some weak kings and floats. A small C-bet pressures the weakest part of that range and sets up turn barrels on spades, 5, 9, and many high cards. Notice what we did not do. We did not flat pre-flop to see a flop cheap. We took position, used fold equity, and created a pot where our range advantage matters. That is how you avoid hope poker while still defending wide. Common mistakes to cut immediately. First, open folding too much in the small blind because you fear playing out of position. You are surrendering forced expected value. Second, defending the big blind with dominated offsuit hands that cannot continue versus barrels. Yes, you are getting a price. No, it is not automatic. Third, 3-betting only premiums. You become readable and the small blind prints by opening any 2 and folding when you finally wake up. Fourth, calling 3-bets out of the small blind with hands that cannot realize. If you call, you need a post-flop plan beyond check fold. Key takeaway: blind versus blind. Pre-flop is a wide-range battle where expected value comes from disciplined aggression. In the small blind, open frequently, but only with hands that have a plan versus 3 bets. In the big blind, defend wide, but prioritize hands that realize equity and include a real 3-bet bluff strategy built around blockers and playability. Respect online rake by cutting passive, low-equity calls and let position plus fold equity do the heavy lifting. Now, let's test your edge. Question 1. Why should the big blind generally defend wider versus the small blind than versus a button open in blind versus blind pots? Answer: because big blind is getting a price with 1 BB invested and will have position post-flop, while small blind's opening range is wide. Explanation: the article notes big blind has dead money in, closes the action in standard cash, and plays in position post-flop, which increases incentive to defend against a wide small blind raise first in. Question 2. What is the main problem with auto-limping from the small blind in most online pools according to the article? Answer: it's passive and hands expected value to competent big blinds. Explanation: the article recommends a high-frequency raise first. In baseline at 100 big blinds and frames auto-limping as fear-driven passivity that stronger big blinds exploit. Question 3. When should the big blind increase 3-bet bluff frequency versus the small blind? And what types of hands does the article recommend using? Answer: when small blind overfolds to 3 bets. Use ace and king blockers with playability, for example, ace 5 suited through ace 2 suited and king 5 suited type hands. Explanation: the text explains blocker-based. 3 bets raise fold equity by reducing the chance. Small blind holds top continuing hands, making immediate pot pickups higher expected value. Question 4. How should stack depth change your approach to speculative calls and aggressive pre-flop action in blind versus blind spots? Answer: at 200 BB plus speculative suited hands increase in value. At shallow stacks, reduce speculative calls and increase aggressive pre-flop action. Explanation: the article states deeper stacks improve implied odds for suited connectors and wheel aces, while shallow stacks reduce that payoff and reward more direct pressure. Question 5. In the provided hand scenario, what is the strategic reason given for making a small C bet on the flop after 3-betting pre-flop? Answer: to pressure the weakest part of small blind's check calling range while leveraging big blind's range advantage and setting up turn barrels. Explanation: the scenario emphasizes big blind's 3-bet range contains strong kings and overpairs, and the small bet targets mid-pairs and weak holdings and prepares profitable barrels on favorable turns. Study hard, play smart. That's it for now. I'll see you in the next lesson.